Bienvenidos, worldwide fans of the planet's hottest entertainment with an edge. I'm En Fuego here, and I welcome you to my namesake program, Enfuegotainment, and a brief Rapido Fuego review that, if it's coming on a Saturday, you know what that means. Yup, Shitterday. Apologies, everybody. I am discussing the new Netflix original film, Eurovision Song Contest, The Story of Fire Saga. Yeah, that's the full real title. And while I just watched one of my favorite comedies the other day, Don't Be a Menace to South Central while drinking juice in the hood, sometimes long names are just a head scratcher. And just the pure intention of this movie, co-written by Will Ferrell, starring Will Ferrell, produced by Will Ferrell, also with other great actors in it. I mean, Rachel McAdams, Pierce Brosnan, Dan Stevens, who kind of steals the show in this film. I think Demi Lovato is in it at one particular point. I don't really know too much about her, but bottom line, this movie is atrocious, and it has money behind it. It has Netflix money behind it, everybody. So you know that, I mean, it's going to be nicely shot, it's going to be slick, it's going to be glossy, all of these things. But what it is not is funny. This movie isn't funny, and yet it tries to weave in this kind of love story that you don't really sense much chemistry. It's not cute. It falls flat. So if I'm just going to briefly hit the story of this one. And it does in a lot of ways, despite seemingly trying to be heartwarming about Icelandic heritage and stuff of that nature, I feel like it's kind of disrespectful in a lot of ways. So maybe others have a different opinion, as art is always subjective. I will constantly contend this, but if I'm not mistaken, Eurovision is a real thing, you know, over in Europe, and it's a song competition, sort of bit, very similar, I guess, to American Idol, some sort of full continent equivalent of that. And I've never even watched American Idol or, America's Got Talent or any of that crap. That's just, those sort of competition shows are not my jam, so maybe if I was more into that, I would be more receptive to this rags to riches story of this fledgling group called Fire Saga that is two childhood friends played by Will Ferrell and Rachel McAdams, who have been slogging away at it ever since seeing ABBA on Eurovision when they were kids, and the Napoleon song of theirs. And actually I really like ABBA as far as sweets go, but nonetheless, despite that soft spot, that we catch up with them grown up all these years later, because it goes from 1973. I mean, boy, how old is Rachel McAdams supposed to be in this? Because it goes from 73 to present day, and I mean, that's what, like 40-something years? I think she's only 41 in real life. Ferrell is in his early 50s now, but yeah, so they're still slogging away at it, but it's purely platonic. So even though Rachel McAdams' character, for whatever reason, is crushing very hard on Ferrell because of the fact that they've just been at it for so long, childhood friends, and just nothing ever became of it. It's just, purely a creative sort of relationship. There is one slightly amusing bit where Ferrell is kind of like just dashing away her hopes at romance with him, and he's like, yeah, you saw what happened with Fleetwood Mac and Seaman and Garfunkel, and I mean, so much of the humor is just painfully bad in this movie. And this is the second Shitterday Ferrell movie that I've reviewed this past month, and as much as I love the guy, I'm genuinely starting to worry if he has lost his touch, because I'm desperately trying to remember the last Will Ferrell movie that just had me just aching from laughing so hard, and it's been a hot minute, man. It genuinely has. And so this is just another one in that long stream of just painfully bad Will Ferrell comedies. And the director of this, David Dobkin, I want to say Dobkin. Anyway, he's directed some decent stuff. I really enjoy Wedding Crashers, Fred Claus, him pairing again with Vince Vaughn, not super funny. But he also did 1997's Clay Pigeons that had a very dark turn from none other than the aforementioned Vince Vaughn as well, where he was segueing into that being typecast as a serial killer sort of thing, because around that time he did, what, the Psycho remake and then Clay Pigeons and so on. But yeah, so this guy has directed good stuff, and it's a well-directed movie. It is just, once again, the writing and the performances, aside from Dan Stevens, who I have never seen in a ridiculous role of this nature. He plays this Russian singer who's kind of trying to swoon Rachel McAdams, especially when she gets, spurned by Ferrell's character, and apparently that's presumably been happening for a long time. And so when they're at this contest, just the means as well that they get to the contest with all kinds of just ridiculous, superstitious stuff with elves, and then there is a blowing up of a ship with all the talent on it. It's like, even the stuff that's supposed to be outrageous and humorous, it just falls so flat, man. I mean, as flat as some of the singing by our two leads in this film. And it made me wonder if they, like, it's very obviously Will Ferrell singing, trust me, on that one. I'm not sure if it was McAdams or not, and I mean, she's a great actress, both of the dramatic variety and the comedic variety. I mean, she's great in Mean Girls, which is a movie I stand by just finding incredibly funny because of the fact that I went to high school with girls like that, so I just totally, that elitist mentality. She can be very, very funny. What is not funny is the accents that most of these people are doing throughout. Boy, and they are so, I mean, Pierce Brosnan as Will Ferrell's father, who is just always disregarding his talent and smushing his dreams, pissing upon them and everything. He's all right enough, but he is still, for such a wonderful thespian, he has to be one-dimensional in this particular role. And yet, everything that you would probably predict is going to transpire in this movie, from them unexpectedly actually getting to the competition, to, you know, being wooed by other, you know, participants there. There's this Greek woman who's going after Will Ferrell's character, and then Dan Stevens' aforementioned Russian character, who is, he is amusingly flamboyant. He is really the only, as I've said a few times already, the only amusingly redeeming factor in this movie, because the rest is most definitely shite. And I know there's seemingly supposed to be some lampooning of the absurdity of this festival, but then the tones are all over the place, because then the film does actually try to get serious, and it's just seriously bad when it tries to do that too. It tries to be this juggling act of these different tones, and sometimes films can have that, you know, dramatic tinge and just kind of, you know, bend to them, and it works. And in this movie, it really, really does not. Once again, it was a slog to watch this, especially with a runtime of over 2 hours. Yeah, anytime I look at a comedy and it's not between 80 and about 100 minutes, like, that's the sweet spot for a comedy. You know, 80 minutes to just a little over an hour and a half. But if you're pushing 2 hours, and this is something that Judd Apatow is unfortunately guilty of all too often with some of those 2.5-hour comedy movies that he's made. I think Knocked Up, and I know his Funny People was also just excruciatingly lengthy. And really, what happens with runtimes of that nature, especially when it's a very just beating a dead horse sort of joke with the accents and the over-the-top silliness and stuff like that, it's tougher to sustain consistency with a runtime that long. You wear the joke out, and that's one of the biggest things in stand-up comedy especially, is you don't want to wear the joke out. You have to be willing to retire it when the right time appears. You don't want to overdo it, because then you'd really start to bore people, and I mean, you start to irritate them at that particular point. And yeah, the joke got so old so fast in this. It does start off with a very amusing imaginary sequence with them singing this song about Volcano Man and whatnot. I was chuckling for a few minutes. Not much else beyond that, and Dan Stevens. So yeah, this is definitely a malo film, everybody. It is 2 out of 5 Fuego Fireballs. So yeah, sorry to all involved. Most notably my beloved Will Ferrell, who had just some hilarious comedic turns in the 2000s and did terrific work on SNL. Took me a little while to warm up to him, but once I did with Old School, I was all on the Will Ferrell train, and I pretty much, I mean, Kicking and Screaming, where he's the kid soccer coach, is great. He has some terrific stuff as far as comedic, you know, repertoire and whatnot, but this one shows that, yeah, the Will Ferrell schlock of sorts, it's wearing thin on me, and I would suspect it is for a lot of other people as well. So 2 out of 5, and that is going to be the end of my thoughts here about Eurovision Song Contest, the story of Fire Saga. Wow, yeah, even the title wore itself on me. I'm like, wow, that's the extent of it. Okay, so in any event, everybody, gracias for tuning in and allowing me to warn you about this film. I've been Jaime En Fuego, and you can find more on all social media sectors like Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, here on the YouTubies. It's primarily a big division of content here. I cover comedies and silly things and comic book stuff, and, you know, I geek out on my Star Wars, but then I also do very serious films like the recent Shirley with Elizabeth Moss, and I cover Oscar contenders when that stuff comes around. So really, I mean, yeah, it is a nice just balance of content, and that's what I strive to do. But if you dig scarific stuff, you need to jump over to my other channel. If for whatever reason you don't know about it, youtube.com/The Horror Show channel. That's where compared to here, where I barely over Jeezy, yeah, we got over 3Z over there. And yeah, I mean, trailer reactions, unboxings, video game Let's Plays, my weekly Hail to Stephen King show on Saturdays, and of course reviews of films, television, comics, you name it. It is a nice variety of the spooktacular over there too. But yes, a like, share, and a subscribe here on my personal channel. Yes, the subscription means a hell of a lot, everyone. So I'm Enfuego. Y'all have been rad status, even if this movie was not. And until the Reel of Ka comes around once more, hasta luego, Cinemigos, constant readers and viewers alike. Say thank you for spending a few minutes here with me on a shit-a-day. And yes, I hope that next time we have far more fulfilling film palaver to share with one another. So until then, stay home, stay safe, and watch more movies. Just not this one.